I'm the Secretary Treasurer for the VA section of Division 18. I'm also a psychologist at the VA Portland and the acting practicum training director. So this is very relevant for me and our practicum students. And I'm also a former intern and postdoc trainee in the VA. So I think most of the presenters have been where our 77 attendees have been at some point in the past. A very valuable presentation over the next hour. And with that, I will hand things over to Rachel Ward.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Rachel. I'm the student rep for the VA section of Division 18. I'm just going to introduce our moderators really quickly before we get started. So first, we have Dr. Jamylah Jackson. She is the chair-elect for the VA Psychology Training Council, the co-chair of VA PTC's Multicultural and Diversity Committee, and Director of Psychology Training at the Dallas VA. Next, we have Dr. Kristin Rodzinka. She is the past chair and external liaison for VA Psychology Training Council and is the Director of Training at the Dayton VA Medical Center. And then last but not least, we have Dr. Shiloh Jordan, who is the chair of the VA Psychology Training Council and the Director of Training for Internship and Residency at the VA Pacific Islands Healthcare System. All right. And so how this will kind of work, going off of last year, which feels like a blur in my mind at this point, is if people have questions, you're welcome to put them into the Q&A. That would probably be the preferred method. And I'll be monitoring that and helping to kind of make sure all questions get answered. Panelists can obviously answer questions quickly during that if they see them. And obviously there is still the raise hand function. So do whatever you feel most comfortable with. Okay. Panelists, is there anything that you would like to say before we get started?
No, I can talk to a great hour.
Okay, then it sounds like we will get started. So let's wait for the questions to kind of go in.
All right, well, I think I'm kicking us off. So I of course prepared some comments, so we'll try to stay focused to what I was tasked to discuss today, but really feel compelled to start just by saying what a pleasure it is to work with this group of people. You know, I'm always reminded about what are the core reasons I like being in this VA healthcare system, and it really is the relationships and the collaborations. I think the very things that have made this talk possible in actually a fairly short turnaround time. And so I just appreciate everyone that was involved in this, and I'm thrilled to be able to speak to hopefully some prospective new trainees and future colleagues. So with that, I'll get myself a little on task. So thank you to everyone for your interest in learning more about training opportunities in the VA. We are all very excited about what we have to offer. We think the VA is the most awesome place to work. We do have prepared comments, but we should have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So maybe that's the other thing I'll add to what Rachel said. So we are not going to talk for a full hour. We'll say some things and then be thinking as we go about anything you'd like us to field, because this is a great opportunity to take advantage of our time here today. I think that it is absolutely fair to say that your presenters here feel very strongly about providing both the best veteran care and the best training in psychology possible. You're going to find there is an energy and a passion and a mission that really hold up the work that all of us are doing here in this VA healthcare system. And so to kick us off, I'm going to talk a bit about VA culture and what you can expect working in this kind of an environment. So first, not everybody knows that the VA actually includes 3 parts. So there's Veteran Health Administration, VHA, that's where we are, VBA, Veteran Benefits Administration, and then the third is the National Cemeteries. So we're going to be talking about, when we use the word VA, we really mean VHA. Sometimes that's helpful to know. VHA is a huge government-run healthcare organization. As I commented, we're also very mission-driven. And I think it helps to know that our core missions actually include training and research. And so these are very much not afterthoughts, but core and central to our mission. But it's, I think, important to state that first and foremost, our mission is to honor America's veterans by providing exceptional health care that improves their health and well-being. And that is really what brings us all to the table every day. So to succeed in VA, really, you need to have to decide if you're interested and invested in veterans' perspectives and values. Veterans are a very heterogeneous group, but there are also some really important and common themes. For most people who have served in our nation's military, that period of service was extremely important to their identity and identity development, and likely has had both some positive impacts and aspects to it, as well as potentially some negative and hurtful aspects. And so being able to hold some of that dialectic and respect their time and service and the things that they have learned and grown through and experienced is really critical. Many trainees at your stage in development haven't had much interaction with veterans or military culture. That's totally okay. I feel like I want to say that again. It is okay if you are one of the people who it's like, I'm really not sure about veterans. Maybe you don't have family members. I know sometimes people are really excited about working in VA because they have their own military experience or have loved ones with military experience. But there are an awful lot of folks who maybe haven't had that connect. Non-veterans sometimes are nervous about being challenged by veterans. And we want you to know that these things are going to be absolutely fine as long as you show interest, respect, and a willingness to learn. You do not need to know all the things. Some things we can help you with. VA training programs do include enough training in military culture to successfully acculturate you and help you to thrive in this environment. But you'll also find that, you know, veterans tend to respond pretty well to you saying, I don't really know about that. Can you explain a little bit more? I want to understand your experience. And so having some cultural humility and a willingness to learn from them, I think goes a really, really long way. Also, the fact that we are working in a huge bureaucracy requires flexibility and patience. Some things I have been practicing today, I will admit. Some of those things that you may be asked to do in a VA healthcare environment might not make sense to you. Please know that a surprising number of our policies actually turn out to be the best option for a complicated scenario. Lots of directives and mandates that we're constantly trying to adjust to ensure that we're providing the best care possible. So please understand, as you come into a system like this, your new perspective is completely valuable. But be sure that when you offer it with humility, since many things are more complicated than they seem at first. And sometimes people come in guns blazing, feeling like, okay, we can help with this, and are only looking at a small piece of a very large picture. Additionally, attributes like diligence, reliability, and accountability are important here. I'm sure we would all agree that those are profession-wide competencies that apply everywhere. But I think recognizing that in addition to following through with clinical and educational responsibilities, working in a VA healthcare system means you're being supported by US taxpayers, and as such may have more formal accountability than you're used to in your graduate school experiences. A great example of this is there can be some rigidity in things like your tour of duty. You're going to probably be expected to be at work, ready to work and working by 8 o'clock. And you are going to be expected to be here working until 4:30. And, you know, we take leave in 15-minute increments, which for someone like myself who worked in the community for a decade before coming to VA 14 years ago, like that was an adjustment. And I think graduate school environments where you can kind of come and go, and as long as you're doing your work, you do well. Just be prepared for a little bit of culture shift. Additionally, the VA is a highly visible organization. Americans generally feel very strongly about supporting veterans, but there can be disagreements about the merits of particular military actions, the role of government in healthcare, lots of different opinions. So the VA can act kind of as a lightning rod. that then results in high levels of scrutiny. So just be aware, if you stay focused and professional as a trainee and even as a staff psychologist, you generally will be free from too much distraction related to those external factors. At the same time, watching policy play out, observing how psychology leadership advocates and develops programs to function within this environment to the best interest of veterans can be a fabulous growth opportunity. So do give these kinds of factors some thought before interviewing. Be prepared to display your willingness to engage in this culture through your actions, through respect. This tends to come quickly for most trainees, and many trainees are really surprised at how stimulating and meaningful this work is. I also want to comment that despite the sometimes bad press that the VA gets, we actually provide superior and in some cases equal care to other healthcare systems on all major variables and metrics, and for lower cost. A lot of people don't know that. This is especially true in the realms of the behavioral health. So knowing that this is an environment that really values and emphasizes evidence-based work and ensuring that we're providing the best care possible is I think an important part of our identity as VA providers. On top of that, the VA actually has a 75+ year history of training in psychology. This was acknowledged in April by an APA presidential citation acknowledging our commitment to training, supervising, and mentoring psychology trainees. You may not know that 1 in 5 interns in psychology is training in VA right now, and over 70% of all VA psychologists report having trained at some point in their training history in a VA healthcare environment. VA has a National VA Psychology Training Council. That's actually what the three of us are representing in terms of our past chair, and chair-elect positions. We collaborate on an ongoing basis with the Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, who are the leadership for mental health in VA, and also the Office of Academic Affiliations, who is the institution that manages and funds all these training positions. And our strong history of pioneering psychology training really does make it a great organization to train as well as work in. So VA's leadership in behavioral health care is due in large part to the phenomenal contributions from many psychologists in leadership positions. Super exciting to be a part of this big team. And I think just a wealth of opportunities to see different ways psychologists function across a whole range of specialties and also roles. So I think those things are common really at any VA, and if you end up interviewing at multiple VAs, my guess is you'll hear some similar messages at those interviews. At the same time, there are also differences. You're going to hear probably every training director quote the line, "If you've seen one VA, you've seen one VA." It's kind of our thing that we say. This is because how national policies and directives are implemented look different across sites. This includes our training programs. Also, the geographical needs of veterans can be different in different areas, so how everything plays out might look a little bit different. So just know that each VA internship is an independent program with its own accreditation, its own policies, and its own training experiences. VA nationally does not dictate exactly what an internship program is going to look like at each and every VA. So while there are similarities, there will also be significant differences. So it is worth taking a close look at each program's brochure, see how the specific offerings line up with your interests. Things like research opportunities may be rampant at one place and not available at another. And just the size, culture, and opportunities on given rotations or teams can be different across different VA sites. So do pay attention to what each program offers, since I'm assuming all of us are looking for a good fit, both sides. So after speaking about the culture a bit, I'm going to try to somewhat answer the question, why do I want a VA internship? And I'm just going to go through a couple of key areas that I think are really relevant to what we have to offer. So first, the VA has a significant commitment to education and training that has nothing to do with billable hours. And in fact, the way that we provide services, while we want to make sure staff are productive, really doesn't have the same kind of dynamics it does in a private healthcare system. VA has a long history of providing education and training. We train the most psychologists in the country. Education is one of the core pillars of the VA. Within VA, and because of our unique funding sources, this focus on education and training can really trump any kind of attention to billable hours. Another thing that I think is nice is that often being able to provide supervision is seen as a benefit and a privilege, as opposed to a collateral duty or something people get voluntold or assigned to do. Another big strength that the VA has to offer is experience with evidence-based practice and empirically supported treatments. Science drives care and decision-making within our VA. You'd be expected to engage in measurement-based care. There are a host of evidence-based psychotherapies within a diverse range of clinical presentations, from PTSD, substance use, insomnia, depression, pain, motivational interviewing, couples work, and on and on and on. Tremendous resources have been devoted towards training and certifying staff members in empirically supported treatments in order to make them widely available to veterans, including each facility having a local evidence-based psychotherapy coordinator. Trainees then benefit from this because then you get trained by certified providers who have been trained and received consultation in these interventions. And depending on local availability, you might even have the opportunity to take those formal trainings and participate in consultation. So this leaves you well prepared to treat a diverse range of presentations relying on science. On top of that, there's a huge range of diverse clinical training experiences, including interprofessional training, because this is not mental health specific, but a healthcare system. There are a wide range of clinical experiences that include different levels of care, like inpatient, residential, and outpatient, but also general and specialty mental health services. We address pretty much every diagnostic category and often have mental health and psychology providers co-located or embedded in primary care or medical specialty clinics. So there's opportunities to work with a range of disciplines, engage in interprofessional training and consultation that I think is just really a rich experience. There's also opportunities to engage in social justice and public service work. Training at VA provides students with opportunities to work with underserved populations, as most of the veterans we care for typically don't have the economic resources or other resources to seek healthcare elsewhere. We have opportunities to provide care to individuals who have risked their lives for our country. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, again, that sense of mission and being able to give back to those who have sacrificed so much. And I think it can just be incredibly rewarding. As I've alluded to before, psychologists in VA have lots of different kinds of jobs and lots of different roles. So there's this broad range of career trajectory here, and being able to observe psychologists doing clinical work, administrative work, research, serving in leadership roles, providing supervision and consultation, give you a chance to really see myriad of ways that you could have your career play out and maybe even get to dabble in different things that you haven't considered during your graduate school experiences. Now, you're going to hear probably my colleagues repeat this, but I think it's important to say that in order to get a VA internship or a postdoc, you do not have to have had VA experience. It's also true that you don't have to have had VA training in order to be hired as a staff psychologist here. But there are tremendous benefits to being trained within a VA system that can, I think, help prepare you and act as a pipeline. We truly are looking to train and collaborate with our future colleagues. And I know that's how I see trainees at our site. And so, you know, when we've had good experiences and when you've had good experiences, if there's opportunities to keep people engaged and working with us out of training and into employment positions, that's always something we like to see. The last thing I'm going to comment on is just funding. You know, it's been a bumpy few years. There are a lot of sites that really struggle with stable funding and finances. We are very fortunate in that funding comes directly from the Office of Academic Affiliations, which is federally funded. The overall budget is stable. So there are very, very few exceptions to this consistent and stable funding, not only for stipends, but benefits and supervisors. So this consistency in training and commitment to training really has been able to go on uninterrupted. And in fact, I might even argue has gotten additional support as we've gotten time and resources to make sure that we can adjust to things like the pandemic that we had never anticipated before. So I think with that, I'm going to hand off to my colleague, and we will continue to encourage people to use the chat if you think of questions about things we're talking about.
Thanks, Kristin. And I see several great questions in the chat, and I'm going to do some impulse control and not just derail all that I was going to say and start answering these great questions, but try to weave in a little bit of response as we go along. I'm Shiloh Jordan, she, her pronouns, located in Honolulu, Hawaii, and our healthcare system serves the greater Pacific Basin, including Guam, Samoa, and a little clinic in Saipan and the rest of the Hawaiian Islands as well. And so I just highlight that because I think one thing that even some of the current interns here have said is that they haven't always considered a site or like Hawaii, for example, until a colleague recommended it. And so when we're thinking about application to programs, to really think, we'd encourage you to think about a full range and not just kind of the ones you've heard of or very highly known metropolitan areas, but to think about the many different types of experiences that are found across the country in great locations. And I think particularly some of our rural programs as well. And I think, yeah, I don't know why I'm little on the screen still and Kristin's big, but I'll just keep on rolling with it. Some of the rural locations can offer some great training opportunities and have maybe some different unique experiences that you maybe not have thought of or weren't on your radar as well. So when looking at programs, we encourage you to really apply to a wide range of different sites and think about there are certain geographical areas that are just going to be more saturated and therefore more competitive just because there are more people wanting to stay, remain, live in the area, move back to the area as well. And some ways that you can start to see kind of like, do I have a good range of different types of sites that I'm applying to is to look at the APIC data on the APIC site and see how many applications are typical of that site versus how many slots that they have. And to also look at the public materials of the program and identifying where are different candidates that have matched there typically from. Now, I say that to not also to really hold that in context, because it just could be that there haven't been a lot of applicants from your program and that it would be very welcomed for candidates from your program to apply, but just it hasn't been on the radar of previous candidates. And what I've noticed as a training director is once we get applications from a program one year, then we tend to get more in the years after, that there's this kind of word of mouth that occurs. And so to really be speaking to alumni from your own program about what were their interview experiences last year and what were the programs that interested them. And I would say lean towards applying and learning about a program and being able to have the opportunity to potentially interview and find out if the program is a good fit for you as well. I'd really encourage taking advantage of opportunity to speak with current interns as well, excuse me, as they can help you to get a better sense from their own perspective about what it's really like to potentially relocate to the area or to be a trainee within that healthcare system as well. And then really looking at the program brochure. Although the program brochure will all probably contain the same VA government symbols and other graphics or approved graphics that we use, there's going to be nuances within each of the program public materials that provide more insight into how that system operates as well, including potential faculty bios, rotations that are available, requirements of the program, and the general spirit of the program as well. Once you've thoroughly reviewed it, you can also make note of what are the questions that I still have as well. And if there are minimum requirements that are asked or recommended requirements, it's okay to reach out to the training director and say, this has been my experience. Would I be somebody that you would consider at your site? That's a fair question from my perspective of a training director. That's easier to answer than would I be qualified or considered? Because I don't know what the question is asking about any of the things that we've put out in our public materials. It's also, as a training director, I really appreciate when it's clear somebody's read the public materials and they're asking me a thoughtful question versus they're asking me a question that they really could have gotten off of Google and is more about trying to connect with me in a different way. Versus really learn about the program. So a better Google question is a less helpful question to reach out to a training director about versus really specific to the program as well. And really highly recommend utilizing that data from the APIC site to really seek the number of applications at the site and what is their volume going in to really best understand what's the range of programs that I want to apply to, and not give number of applications as an indication of quality of the program either. It could just be that they are in locations, often geographically, where you're going to have higher amounts of applicants coming through. They're great programs as well, but I wouldn't say that's the only indicator of a quality program as well. And where you really come alive in your training, thinking about what are the types of settings where I really feel like I'm going to grow as a person and as a professional, and I'm really going to fill out any holes in my training, and I'm really going to be able to grow in all the ways that I hope to on internship is also a great frame of mind to have as you're looking at these sites. Thinking about not having to have VA practicum experience, while also, as Kristin highlighted, that having that VA practicum experience can, one, really let you know what is it like to work in a VA, and what are what is asked of me, what are some of the rigors and the requirements and the nuances, and also to be able to get some of that experience with some of the manualized, non-manualized treatments, systems issues as well. So if you have the opportunity to engage in a VA practicum, we certainly would recommend it. And I think a year-long experience would be something that, at least in the practicum we run, we don't do less than a year, just because it almost takes part of the year to get used to the system and then the rest to really flourish within it. I also just want to highlight that as you're going through, and maybe this is prior to even engaging an interview, but not getting an interview or maybe not matching at a site doesn't mean that that site is never a potential for you in the future. There have been, I know through my list of people who didn't match for an internship and then were great postdoc candidates in the future, or didn't end up here for internship and later ended up as psychologists here on staff. And so I just think that there's ways that that's not an ending to any potential door in the future, and to really kind of consider that in mind as not the end all be all regarding the internship process. It's just kind of the next step in our career as well. We shift gears and we look at interviewing. We encourage to remind ourselves, as Kristin said, if you've seen one VA, you've seen one VA, and that also comes to interviews. Everybody has their own process of how to engage in interviews that are, I think, more varied at the trainee program level than if it's a regular staff position that is being interviewed for. And so some programs will not have interviews. They may just have an open house that is optional. Others, like my program, we do an online written interview. And then other programs have traditional interviews that mostly for this training year will be virtual because of the pandemic and also wanting to create access, while some may still have in-person interviews and a combination of an open house as well. So in reading the brochure, to really be aware of what are the types of interviews they do. Some are shorter, some are full day. And so having that knowledge of reading the program brochure before the interview can help also hone the questions you want to follow up with in the interview, and also know what to expect as well, which I think anytime we know what to expect, it can help our own anxiety as well. It may be helpful to practice some questions with a trusted colleague or peer. And this includes everything from somebody who's going to give you feedback like, you swivel in your chair a lot, you move around and fidget. Here's what your nonverbals kind of send the message of. Having and being able to answer a question about a challenging clinical case, a successful one. And this goes into stuff you've likely shared in your cover letter, but do you really know why you're interested in that particular training site? Apart from all of us wanting to finish a degree. I mean, that was one of my things. I was like, I want to finish this. That's one of my goals. Of course it is. And why are you interested, not just in VA, but in this particular VA site? And you really reflecting on that will help in your cover letter, but it also helps in your interview so that you really know why you're interested in this site and can communicate that effectively because you've really thought about it as well. Another thing in interview is that I like for peers to give feedback on is, are you really speaking to your skill set, or are you downplaying yourself at all in your language? To be able to have a true representation of yourself be able to come through as well. We also encourage dressing professionally. This doesn't mean spending a bunch of money on clothing. It's just really thinking about appearance of professionalism is important when engaging in interviews, and to really tune in if there's cues regarding appropriate dress code that may vary by geographical location. In Hawaii here, you won't see people in ties and suits unless it's Joint Commission and everyone thinks we're having a survey or something is really happening that's a big deal, versus other VA settings when that would be more normative and be more of the expectation. So there may be cues in the interview invite that also help clue you in as well. I just want to highlight again that each program is unique in their interviews. And so there's not one way to prepare or to expect, but reviewing the program brochure can give you insight into the requirement structure, culture of the program, and can also help you learn more about the geographical setting of the site. And so what may be also relevant for that particular VA area as well. VA catchment was the word I was looking for. So even looking a little bit more of doing some of your own research can give you information on questions for you to further ask at the interview, while also being able to display a genuine interest and awareness of the patient population you'll be serving on internship. That's because the VA is part of the bigger community. So part of the variation of our VAs isn't just that we have different local leadership and their own implementation of national policy. It's that they also reflect the local culture of the environment when we serve. We're very much community health in many ways. And so they reflect often the setting of the local surrounding area versus just a government entity that was plopped down into the middle of a geographical region. So those are just my tips, and I'll turn it over to Jamylah to speak more, and we'll make sure we give time to answer additional questions that are popping up in the chat as well.
Absolutely. Good afternoon or morning, everyone. I'm excited to talk with you all a little bit about diversity in the VA. There can sometimes be the stereotype that VA patients are a very homogenous group. I know I certainly had that stereotype when I was applying for internship at a VA years and years ago, many years ago. But the VA actually serves a really wide range of veterans. We see veterans as young as in their 20s, women veterans, varied ethnic groups, varied ability levels, diversity in sexual orientation and identification, socioeconomic status. there's a range. There are all the things. It's so much more diverse than I think you would initially think when you think about a VA. So one of the strengths of diversity training in the VA is that because we are such a large organization, training directors really do have the benefit of learning from shared resources. So we're all members of the VA PTC. The VA PTC has a multicultural and diversity committee that really focuses on providing diversity resources for training programs. Now, as Shiloh and Kristin have mentioned, every program is going to be different. They're going to take some things, tweak it, remix it for what works with their staff. But it's really nice to have such a wide range of feedback and resources that you can get. I'm at the Dallas VA. It is a very large VA. We have 100 psychologists here, but the VA also has a national diversity listserv. And so if there are 100 psychologists just here, when you think about sending an email to the nation about if somebody has an article about this, very specific niche cultural variable that you're struggling with or that you're interested in learning more about, somebody's got something. It's amazing the resources that you can get from the listserv, or things have been talked about already, and we can guide people to the SharePoint page, which is just an internal shared website where there are a bevy of resources that have been accumulated over the years. So it's really pretty awesome and pretty unique to VA because we are a national organization. I think trainees are often surprised at the breadth of experiences that they can have in VA. Shiloh had mentioned thinking about the reasons that you're interested in a particular site. I definitely want to underscore that. You can be honest with yourself. Now, whether or not you convey that to the program, but it's okay to be honest with yourself. So for example, I'm from New Orleans originally. I did my graduate work at the University of Georgia in Athens. I consider New Orleans a real city. I don't consider Athens a real city. It's a college town. Very different. I wasn't crazy about it. So the main thing I was looking for when I was looking for internships was, one, I want to finish my degree. I presumed anything that is APA accredited will get me what I need to do that and teach me to be an awesome psychologist. And I also really wasn't sure what I wanted to do in terms of specialty. And so I selected the Dallas VA because the Dallas VA had like 25 rotations. I don't have to know what I want to do. I can do everything there. And so all of that was my internal dialogue. My external dialogue in terms of my cover letter and interviews was that I was interested in Dallas because of the bevy of opportunities that were listed in the brochure. And I was really excited about the opportunity to work with, XYZ kinds of things. But I think it's important for you to be honest with yourself about what's important to you. It's okay. Whatever is important to you is okay to do that. I think sometimes as graduate students, we kind of judge ourselves like, I shouldn't care about that. It shouldn't matter where it is or, what have you. Be honest with yourself. This is your moment. Moving somewhere for a year is a big commitment. Be honest with what you want, and then think about how you want to convey that to the program that you're interested in. With regard to how different VA programs approach diversity, that's going to be pretty varied as well. So some programs will have diversity seminars, some will have diversity rotations, some have journal clubs, some have other kinds of remix programming. So if you don't see what the program is necessarily doing in terms of diversity in their brochure, then it's perfectly appropriate and fair for you to ask. I'm sure they will have something that they will tell you, and then you can evaluate the extent to which that fits with what you're looking for or kind of makes sense for you. But it's definitely reasonable to ask those kinds of questions. I know we certainly get those questions when folks interview with us as well. I mentioned the National Diversity Listserv. There are also monthly discussion inclusion forums where staff and trainees can discuss various diversity issues. And so the forums are pretty open. Usually there's a general topic that's the theme, but after the first 5 minutes of introducing that theme, it's just kind of open and people sharing how they approach different things, what's worked at their site, how they're dealing with X, Y, or Z. So those are really great. We also have quarterly consultation groups, and those calls are typically more structured. So it's someone presenting on a particular diversity topic and all of those kinds of things. So if you are passionate about diversity, VAs can be a really great place to train because, again, depending on where you are, there may be already a number of amazing resources that are there, but even if there aren't, there are so many national resources that you really can't go wrong. You get what you're looking for and what you need because there are lots of people thinking about these things and really making sure that it filters down to our trainings. And with that, I will turn it over. Do you guys want to alternate questions?
So I made a list of all the questions. Some of them I think are quick answers, and some of them are more complex answers. Do you want me to try to start running through them? What we're expect? We did not game plan this part very well. So, so I'm gonna start with some of the, I think, more straightforward ones. I think Shiloh already responded to, can you speak to whether or not a year-long rotation at a local VA before internship would be recommended? Certainly don't think it is required. If you have that opportunity and you're interested, I'm going to echo what she said. I'd highly recommend you take advantage of that. And I definitely don't think that it will disservice you. How's that? Is that a fair way of saying that? So I know sometimes people worry, if I do this, will then that prevent me from getting a site? I don't think so. My guess is that reflects a lack of understanding about just the sheer scope and volume of different kinds of experiences you can have from one site to another, but also even from one program or rotation to another at the same VA facility. So hopefully that makes sense. Somebody has asked a question about concerns about age, and does age factor into a VA's decisions to interview an applicant? I think first and foremost, I'm going to say that every single program, like I commented before, has their own policies, procedures, selection strategies. So none of us on this panel can give you a real formal answer to that question. But what I will say is it is my belief and what I have observed in this role that we really do tend to stay fairly competency-based in our assessment. So we're going to be looking for, do you have the foundational competencies that are going to support you being successful in a VA? Do you have logical experiences? So you don't have to have worked in VA to have had logical practicum experiences that would support you coming to VA. But if all of your practicums are in like some pediatric center where you've never worked with an adult your entire graduate experience, folks in VA might be scratching our heads a little bit and going, I'm not sure this is the right site for you. You've never even worked with an adult population. How, we're not sure you have the skills and have been prepared for that. So I would be more worried about that being an issue than something like developmental age that I think I'm less concerned about. I see a question specifically about for neuropsych internship. Do you want to see letters of recommendation from neuropsych supervisors or clinical supervisors? I'm going to say this to everyone. We want to see both things. If you're asking a question, whether it's neuropsych or trauma or SUDS or whatever, I think that you are serving yourself well if you choose perhaps a range of people to write letters for you, someone who's involved in maybe your dissertation research, maybe the training director who has kind of a broad perspective, supervisors that have worked with you closely, particularly in areas of strength and interest for you. We notice when there's a gap and we're like, they're interested in this, but they're not sending me any letters for the person who would be able to speak to that. Then I start wondering what happened there. I don't know if either of you want to speak to that, but I think that's important as you think about who to ask to write your letters.
I wonder why is this so narrow and why wasn't but when I see the broad range, I'm like, oh, broad range. And I think too, that would be, I'd rather have a letter from someone who really can speak to the skills and experiences and personal attributes of someone versus a big name who clearly doesn't know the individual very well. And so it doesn't give me a sense of the person.
Yeah, and I think I would just add that you want to clarify with the folks that are writing letters for you that they can write a strong letter, because I think a weak letter is more damaging than no letter at all. Let us wonder why there wasn't a letter from this person. That's better than them writing a letter where you can tell that they are just not a huge fan of this particular applicant. So think about that too. And it's okay to ask people, are you able to write a strong letter? You don't just have to say, can you write a letter? Because sometimes folks will agree to kind of be nice, but then the actual letter that they write is not helpful.
I also think it's okay to say, do you have time to write me a good letter? Because someone who knows you well and thinks highly of you, but that is not going to take the time and effort to put that onto the paper might not serve you also. And that can be a reality as well. So another question was about accepting students from APA accredited professional schools versus funded universities. What I'm going to say is, again, I think that's going to be variable from one site to another. I can speak for Dayton that we very much take trainees from both. I think that's true at many VAs, but there may be different cultures at different sites. So back to digging into the brochures, and really the APIC site sort of has a nice table that will help you get a sense of what that particular program is doing. So I'd encourage you to look at that if you have concerns about that or strong opinions. I had commented about geographical differences in terms of veteran needs, so I appreciate the clarifying question. I'm just going to give you one specific example. I did a site visit at Montana VA healthcare system in Helena, Montana. And I'm from the Ann Arbor, Detroit metro area, and I live in Dayton. So Dayton, I would consider a small town, which has all the amenities of a town, but none of the hassles of a great big town. So we don't have all the fancy stuff, but we've got a lot of good stuff going on here. You know, a more metro area, more urban, different population. Montana, like literally they talk about, Shiloh talked about the rural frontier. So in my brain, in my lived experience, I know urban, I know suburban, and I understand what rural is, but like going out there, then we go from rural to frontier. So what a VA that's trying to service a population where they're spread out across just hundreds and hundreds of miles versus a highly populated area, it just looks different. Who the patients are, what the patient's needs are. And so the programming they have available should look different, and how they're meeting the needs of that patient population. So I hope that helps to clarify that, because it really will look different. And are you needing to do more telework, or are you doing more face-to-face work? And what does your patient population's experience look like? I know at our site we have 5 community-based outpatient clinics. So we have our local site and our more rural sites, and there actually is a pretty significant range back to the heterogeneity of our patient population, that the veterans we serve here don't all look the same and aren't living in the same kinds of environments and cultures.
And Kristin, if I could add, sometimes we have VAs that are closer to active duty populations. So sometimes when veterans are transitioning out of care, you'll get access to veterans that are brand spanking new to the VA system. So there's a lot of variability there, and hopefully it's a reflection of the community that the VA in your area is serving. So
yeah, I appreciate you bringing that. So Dayton is home to the largest Air Force base in the country, right? Patterson Air Force Base. We have a lot of active duty folks. Ohio also has one of the highest number of reservists in the country. So we see folks sometimes who are both veterans and reservists. And also I think serving veterans who served in combat as reservists look different than veterans who were active duty who served in combat. So I think, yeah, back to that, just there's variability in what we see. Without a doubt.
You learn too as you work in VA is the different cultural variables between branches. Even. So in the Air Force,
absolutely.
Very different than a Marine or Army versus Navy and all those other kinds of things. Coast Guard. The Coast Guard counts. The Coast Guard counts.
It totally does. There's a question too about working with first responders. You will work with first responders. I mean, the military are first responders. So whether you want to work with a military population or first responders in your community, a VA internship would 100% be able to prepare you for working with a first responder population. I will say that. I don't say things definitively. I will say that definitively. I believe that to be true. There was a question about locating rural VA programs. I mean, I think part of that is just looking at the materials. Shiloh, do you want to?
Well, I just put the psychology training government or the VA site so that we could list it and they could see all the programs. So I think that might be the best way to look at state by state as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Best way to get in touch with current interns if their names aren't listed in the program brochure? 100% email the training director. We'll hook you up. And if you have a training director who won't connect you to the trainees, then feel free to use that information however you need to.
Yeah.
I will happily connect you to anybody. Usually we provide that information at the time of interviews as opposed to in advance. But I think if you wanted to reach out to current interns in advance of that, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to ask for. So let me just validate and encourage that as a reasonable practice. Yeah, you're trying to learn and get information. I think that is a good way to get information. Okay, the PsyD question I should have answered at the same time as the professional school question. Yeah, I think it's going to be highly variable about how they're viewed in the VA system. I know at our site, again, that is equally acceptable to the PhDs, but there may be programs that have biases one direction or the other. Okay. I think I'm making it through the questions, although we have a couple of new ones. For those who don't have experience within the VA system, do you think it's worthwhile to address this in our cover letters? I think my response to that would be, in your cover letter, tell me why you want to be at my VA. So I don't think you have to have had VA experience to convince me that you're interested in what my VA internship program has to offer.
Well, and I think you don't have to think about it as I've got this huge deficit. They are already judging me because I don't have this experience. I think, Kristin, like you're saying, the more you can highlight, I'm interested in severe or serious mental illness, if that's what you're interested in, or I'm interested in getting experience with addiction or whatever it is that they do that's interesting to you, it's okay to highlight those things and to talk about any relevant experiences that you've had, VA or not. In those areas that make you potentially a good fit for that program.
Yeah. There's a question about working as an intern in VA versus active service. I will say I think there is a huge difference between those two career paths. None the least of which is that most people who are active duty are trying to present themselves as very psychologically healthy and well, and often in a VA healthcare system, there are reasons to present yourself as ill as possible. So I think there's a huge disconnect there. The age of the population, the functioning level of the population is very different. And if you're looking at an active duty internship program, you're also committing yourself to years of service in a way that you are not in the VA. So if that is something you're thinking about, like, do I want to work with veterans or do I want to work with active duty? I would strongly recommend that you talk to people in both of those environments to get a good understanding, because while people who serve in our military have commonalities, I do think active duty service members and veterans are very different groups. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything about that, but I would not consider those equivalent at all.
Yeah. We're attached to Tripler Army Medical Center, and they have their own active duty internship program. It's even like expectations of role of the training director, who's an officer and can give orders, versus me as a training director over civilians, where some of our interns have been former service members, but the role and the relationship and the hierarchy, there's still power differential, but a different, there's also different things we're focusing on as a result of some of our roles as well. And I think whether someone calls me ma'am or sir is their own comfort level, and whether they even use the doctorate title as well varies according to culture of the local station. But I see them being very vastly different, even as we all share weirdly painted pink walls here in Hawaii. But they are unique, each of their own.
And for those of us with sites in proximity to bases, like we have sharing agreements, so we treat our active duty inpatients here at our VA. So there are sometimes opportunities to work with folks across, depending on the site you're at. But again, yeah, just very different. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm not sure I'm trying.
I think, Kristin, I think, hold on one second. Josh, were you going to say something?
No, this is Edgar. I was just going to say that to your point, Shiloh, the missions are different of the agencies. And even though they're government agencies, they're going to be structured a little bit different. And I think the best way that I can kind of boil it down in the little time that we have left is that the mission of the VA is really getting people integrated back into their communities and really supporting their recovery. A lot of active duty military programs are really looking at mission readiness and how do we get people back into the work that they're supposed to be doing. So that in and of itself, I think, will be able to shape your training experiences. So back to you, Kristin.
One of the first questions that was asked, and I know there are more questions we haven't gotten to yet, was the application to ask the cover letter address why you want to work with veterans and asked what our reasons were. And, you know, I think it's a great question with long answers, but one of the things I will say is I did a training experience in graduate school with VA, very much loved it, spent the first chunk of my career in the private sector. And really what brought me back to VA was that I loved working with veterans, but that the VA offered a tremendous amount of opportunities for growth and development that I had maxed out in my community environment. You are not going to find anywhere with access to more resources, more opportunities to transition your role, take on collateral duties, be involved in training, be involved in research, all of the things. So if you're someone that is like, I want to be a kid in the candy store and I want to eat all the candy, but I might not be able to eat it all at once, but I still want to try all the candy, VA is a great place to be, whether you're at a training level or at a staff level. So that's part of my answer. I don't know if my colleagues want to try to take that one too.
I did not do a VA practicum. And so that was not part of, like, my love of working with veterans was not part of my answer at all, because I had zero experience with it. Again, my internal dialogue was, I want somewhere in a good location, somewhere that is accredited, somewhere that pays. And that was that. So what
I was changing for staff, right, as opposed to internship. So you're answering the intern question.
So I think what I talked about was the match between my interest and what the site offered for all of the VAs that I applied to. So I would look through their brochure about what kinds of opportunities that were unique to that site versus a different site, and talk about the things that got me excited enough to take on to that potential site. So I think really highlighting that it doesn't have to be about veterans or my dad's a veteran, my spouse is a veteran, or anything like that. If you have those and those are your genuine reasons, and absolutely you can play that up. But it doesn't have to be that. It can also be just your interest in the awesome training that the program provides.
And thanks, Jamylah. I like that idea of your internal dialogue versus what you put out there. It kind of got me thinking about, why am I here in Denver? Having been in Texas, I knew I wanted mountains and I wanted seasons. And I was already bit by the VA bug early in my career, having done all my practicums at the VA. But it does go back to, where do you see yourself, and really being able to see not only what the site has to offer for you personally, but professionally. And I think going back to Kristin's point, the VA is kind of a buffet, and sometimes it's really hard to pick on any given day, where you want to go next. So.
Kristin, what questions have we missed kind of answering?
I started trying to answer a couple of them. The ones I'm going to go to the bottom. Someone's asking about refugee populations and about whether there'd be overlaps between the two. I'm not sure if that's going to be a direct map on, but in terms of working with certainly trauma and developmental trauma and other things, you'll have lots of opportunities in the VA healthcare system to work with that. Best way to disclose our own diversity variables. Let's see, are the essays the best place to convey this, or is it also good to mention in the cover letter? Wow, I mean, I think these are things that we really value at our site, but I know people get really a wide range of what is and is not appropriate to disclose in a cover letter and an essay. So I think people are forced to make some pretty highly personal decisions about that. But I think that at the end of the day, my suggestion is back to being honest with yourself and what you feel safe in communicating to others. You're going to look for a good fit. If my site doesn't like you because of a diversity variable, okay, then you probably don't want to be at my site anyway. So the fact that you've kind of outed yourself to that diversity variable or need or whatever training priority, I mean, diversity could be about anything, right? So I think being able to be somewhat genuine, but also professional is my advice when it comes to those things.
There is one quick question about VAs using a point system to determine who to invite for interviews. That's going to be different for every program. Every program will outline what they prioritize. So for some people, you might get extra points for having proposed your dissertation, or extra points for having defended your dissertation, or for having published articles versus presentations versus not, and things like that. So that's going to be highly site dependent.
And I think utilizing a rubric. So there's a rubric that different programs use, and how much something's emphasized in the program will then determine how much different weights hold within it as well. I know that, just to also add in the question about difference between interview and open house. Open houses are typically an opportunity for candidates to learn more about the program. And in non-pandemic times in Hawaii, it's time to like eat some really good food as well, and just get a sense of what all that's there for the program. They're typically non-evaluative, or in the sense of not part of the formal evaluation. I shouldn't say non-evaluative, because that makes it seem like it's a casual barbecue as well. And versus the interview is much more of the structured response to questions setting. And so sometimes programs will have an interview and an open house set up even in the same day or separately. And in the current state of things, there's going to be a lot of open houses that operate in the virtual platform, more so than if we were having this discussion a few years ago as well.
There was a question about assessment experience. I'll just say, look at the program's criteria. So some programs will say minimum for assessment criteria is that you have administered X amount of this measure or other measure or things like that. So usually in the program's materials will let you know the extent to which they are valuing certain assessments. But yeah, assessment's important in the VA system for sure.
Just wanted to do a quick time check since we are nearing the end of the hour. Want to make sure that we are respectful of our panelists' time and also our audience time. So any last minute questions, Kristin, that you wanted to put to the panel, or did we feel comfortable wrapping up at this point?
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my email in the chat and invite people. You can reach out to us if you have questions. And I know I'm willing to field just sort of general questions if you have specific things you felt like we didn't get to that you are curious about. If that feels like a safe space, I do think that it can be helpful when you're trying to navigate all of this to have people you can talk to.
Yeah, thank you for all of y'all, really, for being so generous with your time and your experience. I can't begin to tell the audience how lucky we are to have members of our VA Psychology Training Council be here to be able to kind of share their experience and share their guidance. So really excited to have y'all, as always, every year partner with us on this. And for folks that are in the audience, really looking forward to seeing your applications. We're really excited to continue to grow our VA psychology workforce and be a part of the training that VA is able to provide to our entire profession. So whether you decide to apply for a VA internship or not this go around, just know that our VA section is here to support you. You're welcome to continue to register and join us as an affiliate if down the road you're interested in a VA in a VA position, in a VA career. We're definitely here as a resource to be able to support you in that. So that being said, thank you again for everybody coming. Rachel, thank you for getting us kicked off, and we look forward to seeing you in the next training year. Take care.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.